Item 12 is a report of the accreditation team site visit to Merced County Office of Education. Consultant Erin Sullivan will introduce the team, and joining her at the table, or introduce the item, Joining her at the table is team lead Barb Leibold. Did I pronounce that correctly? Leibold, thank you. And institutional representative Stacy Shasky, program coordinator for the teacher induction program. Carla Paul, the program coordinator for the teacher induction program as well. And also Michelle Symes, is that correct? All right, Director of the Administrative Services of the Clear Induction Program. Anyone need to recuse himself? Seeing none, Ms. Sylvan. Please begin, Ms. Sylvan.
Thank you. Good morning. So on January 22nd through 24th, our 5-member team conducted the accreditation site visit at Merced County Office of Education. Merced County has both a teacher induction and a clear administrative services credential induction program. They serve 13 districts within the county, which is no small feat. This county is very rural, so there's a very sort of large geographic area that they're serving for these programs. The visit proceeded smoothly. There were no unusual circumstances. The team worked very well together, and its work was thoroughly supported by the strong and capable leadership of team lead Barb Leibold and by the responsiveness of the program staff. And with that, I'll turn it over to our team lead.
Turn myself off. Thanks, Erin. Good morning. It's a pleasure to state that all common standards and all program standards for the Merced County Office of Education teacher induction and administrator induction programs were found to be met, leading to a unanimous recommendation for accreditation. I want to thank you not only to the team of professionals that I work with, but also to the county's induction team, who graciously responded to our requests for additional information, which I know led to some very long work days and some greatly abbreviated weekends for them. As Erin alluded, Merced's program serves a truly rural and diverse area of California, covering nearly 2,000 square miles, making it almost twice as big as Rhode Island. Serving as the lead, I just thought I'd throw that in for context. Okay.
There will be a test.
Serving as the lead educational agency for both 2-year induction programs, the program staff is located in the Educational Services Division, serving teachers and administrators from 13 school districts and boasting a 99% successful completion rate across both programs. Faced with the size of this county and the challenges that can arise when clients include many small districts whose leadership wears multiple hats, such as being superintendent, principal, and perhaps a part-time first grade teacher, or perhaps being principal, secretary, and the entire human resources division, and credential analyst, the induction team is to be recognized for the strength of lines of communication that they have established with their partnering districts that ensures clarity of vision and timely services for their candidates. The program staff are also to be commended for the culture of their advisory council, which is actively involved in decision-making based on data from both programs in regard to candidate competencies, mentor qualities, and ongoing program improvement. Both programs are clearly dedicated to providing a rigorous system of support that is in a constant state of ongoing improvement due to their data-informed decision-making processes. In interviews, candidates from both programs remarked on the timeliness of extra support provided for both program completion and their ongoing professional growth, along with the clear processes in place for candidates who need additional assistance. Interviews also confirmed that the programs have successfully transitioned to ones driven by the needs and interests of their candidates. Each program's design includes strong mentoring components focused on individualized support, and the individual learning plan processes are both meaningful and within the context of candidates' current positions. The Merced County Office of Education is also to be commended for adding an additional program coordinator, Carla. Just so you know, Carla's first day was when we got there. All right, okay. With a background in special education, and she's still with them, okay?
Trial under fire.
With a background in special education to its teacher induction program this past January. The addition of a second coordinator demonstrates the county's commitment to providing quality services to the educators they serve, and most importantly, those educators' students. The county is also to be commended for ensuring that each program's budget is protected, thus safeguarding the quality of the induction experience currently provided to novice teachers and new administrators.
with that,
All right. Thank you, Ms. Leibold. We'd now like to call on the institution to say a few words about the visit. This is not the time to dispute the team findings, but rather provide any thoughts you may have about the visit.
well, good morning. Thank you for having us here today. We're actually really excited to be here. I want to first thank Aaron and Barb. I think without their support, this would not have happened as smoothly as it did. We've all heard the green story, but in reality, it has really put us back on a nice path in our program. And Aaron and Barb were very responsive and very open and honest, letting us know when they didn't know the answer and when they needed to double check. And we appreciate that. We spent well over a year, Stacy and I, preparing for this visit, which really helped align our programs. I clearly ran CASC, she clearly ran TIP, and over this process we've been able to bring them together and make a credentialing unit as opposed to two separate programs. And our goal now is to be the credentialing powerhouse of the San Joaquin Valley. And so we're moving forward with more credentialing programs now that we have Carla on board. So we're excited about how it went and where we're going, and we ask for any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Any committee member have any questions, comments? Committee member Webb.
First of all, congratulations. It was a great report to read, and it's really exciting to see what you're doing. Minor thing, on page 8, under course of study for the Clear Administrative Services credential, it says ILP, but it should be an IIP. Does that matter? Because in admin, it's an individual induction plan, and in teacher, it's an individual. I don't know if that matters.
What?
Yeah, does the institution call it an ILP?
Yes, individualized learning plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from committee members? Okay, Committee Member Erickson.
Congratulations on a very successful visit, and I move that we accept the team's recommendations.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Second by Committee Member Webb, I saw first. So all in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. So we want to thank again Ms. Leibold and your team. Thank you so much. And Ms. Shasky, Ms. Paul, Ms. Symes, and Ms. Sullivan. Thank you all. I think we can do for a break.
Yeah, I was. Actually, I was seeing it if Suzanne could hear. Suzanne, can you hear it? All right. Well, welcome back. We're going to convene the afternoon session. Are we on? Yeah. Of the Committee on Accreditation, we're going to begin with item 13, which is the discussion of first-year program completer survey results. Consultant Aaron Sullivan will present this information. Ms. Sullivan, will you begin, please?
I would love to. Let me just change that view so it's not so overwhelming. I will just start by saying that, yes, I am sharing with you a view from my computer, but that this data is not on the internet, so it's not public. But it is on this nice platform for us so that we have a chance to look at it and kind of get a view of it. So pardon me as I just back up a tiny little bit, say a few things just as a reminder. A lot of this you already know because we've been obviously working on gathering this statewide completer survey data for a number of years. But, this focus on this outcomes data was one of the new key aspects of the new accreditation system as we got that rolling. So what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is our program completer survey data. Of course, we've also got some master teacher surveys, some employer surveys that we're going to be working on. Terry talked to you about the annual data system this morning, and then we'll be getting hopefully some really nice TPE feedback information that we can be using in the future as well. the program completer survey is an annual survey. It is going to be open September 1st. Well, no, I'm sorry. The program completer survey is completed by applicants as they're finishing their application process for credentials. So their institution recommends them, but at some point they have to go in, finish out, and pay, and are asked to complete this survey before they finish up. Now, it is optional, which is why we're so excited about the fact that this year we had such high, about 97% completer, 97% completers. So that's really fantastic. We will, for the master teacher surveys, be opening those from September 1st through October 31st annually, and then being able to provide that survey data back to institutions, so that we're coming through our first full cycle of that this year. And employer surveys will be open from October 15th through mid-December annually. And again, as we gather that data, we get it here, and then we share that back out with the programs. So the uses for this data we are hoping will be varied. So obviously the institutions will be able to use this for program improvement purposes. Accreditation teams will be able to use this information to identify areas of strength with the program, with program completer survey feedback. If the response rate is high enough, then it allows the site visit team, as you, William's not here, I'm pointing over my shoulder. As you heard this morning in William's site visit, when you get a good enough response rate from program completer surveys, then that allows us to not have to dig down so deep or interview a large constituency of those groups at a site visit. So that's nice as well. On a statewide level here, and also on the institutional level that we'll look at as we dive in a little bit more, it's going to help us see if there's any places where we might need to take a look at, first of all, it's going to show us how well everything is doing. And then because the feedback is color-coded, it gives us an instant visual flag if there is a place where we need to drill down on it a little bit. And as I'll talk about this and we'll go through it, you'll see that we are having some discussions here about how this is presented even to us, because there are areas where, because of the color coding, we think we might need to look a little deeper at that, and then when we do, we find out that it's not actually the concern that we think it might be. So I'm going to go ahead and dig into this a little bit more right now. Now, one of the limitations to keep in mind on this particular data that we're going to look at is that we really only have 1 year of data. So there isn't a lot of high stakes kind of decision making that can go into this. It'll be nice as we continue to get this data moving forward. We'll have some things to actually compare it to. Right now, though, it's a single year of data. So just do keep that in mind. So if you can see my mouse moving, my little arrow moving around across the top of the page here, the data, and this is the large sort of statewide data. It's broken down into these 4 views that we can look at, and right now we're looking at program completer demographics. I'm hoping in the future we might actually switch the order of these tabs, because I really feel like this is a great place to start with the demographic data, as opposed to it having be the last thing on the page. And in fact, I think sort of moving backwards is a really good way to view this information.
And Erin, I just want to jump in. We know you can't see this, so that's why Erin's going to walk us through it a bit. It's tiny. We realize how small it is, but we did this at CCTE the same time Terry did hers, and we had some hard copies, but not the whole thing. But we know you can't see this, but she's going to walk you through these pages. So. And this is just our attempt to start visualization of these kinds of data. So none of this is out there in the universe, as Erin said. It's we've been playing with it to kind of see what it might tell us or how we might present some of this data, how it can be informative.
No, thank you. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this page. I'll just mention, and mostly I just want you to see how many options you have for really drilling down on this data. Everything that you touch with your mouse gives you some additional information, which is great. So, you have ethnicity, race over here in the multiple subject programs. It shows you 59%. When you hover over that, it gives you an actual number. which is really nice. Again, there's a million ways to kind of slice and dice this. Overall, what this demographics data shows us is not news to us, which is that the majority of these completer credential candidates or credential holders now are white females. So, that's not news to us. I think the next interesting thing to look at on this is the domains and content page. This has, at the top of the page, you'll see a bar of different colored blue squares, and then there's a dark blue line in the middle and some different information on the bottom. At the top, it's broken into 6 areas with a total of 27 questions. Each of those areas represents a TPE area. And we have them currently labeled. You'll see it says CSTP domains 1 through 6. So again, that may be something that we rename as TPE, because really that's what we're talking about. And in the lower half of the screen, you're looking at content information, and this is where we ask completers to give us feedback on overall content of their program in terms of subject matter. So for instance, I hovered over this first box for multiple subject programs. And this is a nice dark blue rating, which is a good positive. Dark blue is positive. Rating that multiple subject candidates gave on their preparation for teaching English language arts. And in fact, as you scroll across, you'll see the colors go from that nice dark blue to it. It's still a blue. It's still a positive color. Physical education and health science. So we go from English language arts to mathematics, to science, and as the colors get a little bit lighter, history, social science, creative and fine arts, and then finally physical education. These areas where we have white, no blue at all, these are places where we didn't ask that those particular group of candidates this question. So for instance, we didn't ask single subject and ed specialist candidates how well prepared they felt in ELA, in math, and science. What we asked them was specifically how well prepared they felt their program, or how well they felt their program prepared them to teach in their content area. Moving across then, this middle box talks about content in English language arts. So again, you'll see single subject folks did not get asked this question. You'll also notice again that we're pleased to see a lot of blue here. No red, not even any tan. That's fantastic. That shows the candidates are giving overall good feedback to their programs and their preparation for these areas. The farthest one across then is content in teaching mathematics. And again, this was asked of multiple subject and ed specialist candidates. And you'll also see as you compare the multiple subject to the ed specialist folks that their feedback in these various areas is very, very similar going across. So again, not to draw any conclusions from it yet, it's just what do you see visually? Does it make you want to drill down on anything in particular? And what's kind of just a big picture that you can get from this? We next talked about field experiences. This asked candidates to rate their field experiences. When we talked to Cal Council folks about this, we had some really good conversations about the way that questions are worded. So we will probably be taking a look at the wording on some of these questions. For instance, we asked candidates to talk about, let's see. So again, we have multiple single and ed specialists, as always. This area over here in field experiences, this first area where you see kind of all tan, so not really any blue here, which would tend to maybe make you think there might be an area of concern there. How often did your preparation program faculty or supervisors observe your classroom instruction and provide feedback during your clinical practice? This darkest color down here under Ed Specialist suggests that those completers gave a lower ranking, a lower overall ranking for their preparation. But when you go over here to this first corner of the screen, you'll be reminded that Ed Specialist folks are overwhelmingly coming through, not overwhelmingly, but about 50% of them are coming through the intern process. So is this question even applicable to these folks? And that's one of the questions that we had. Can we go back into the questionnaire, back into the survey, and add in some additional programming so that when somebody identifies themselves as having come through an intern program, that we maybe don't need to ask them this question. Because again, initially when you just open up this page, this is one of the first times you start to see a color not blue, and you think, ooh, is that a problem? Well, that's maybe not a question we even need to be asking those candidates. Oh.
As I was going through and looking at the report from last month about support, and I was thinking, some of us are in quads, some of us are in semesters, so if a student's thinking quad, then yes, it was appropriate that somebody only came 5 or 6 times, and if they were thinking about 2 quads, it would have been 10 to 12. So the more specific we can get about those expectations, the better data we'll have.
Just one more thing to say about that. So the wording of the question is, how often did your supervisor come to observe your teaching? But if you're in an online program, they watch your videos. So therefore, I remember a couple years ago, our data was like 0, 0, 0, 0 when we were watching videos every single week. And it's just a misinterpretation of what the question's asking. Unless that's what you mean.
No, and that's a very good point. So, we don't ask them here about an actual physical presence or visit. We do just ask how often these folks observed their classroom instruction. However, you bring up a good point that, again, we talked about a little bit in the office here and also at Cal Council is a vocabulary issue. We ask candidates some questions, and sometimes maybe that's not the wording that they would use. So we're asking them to give us feedback on something that maybe they think they didn't get, because their program calls it something different. So, in fact, that was over. Oh, it's on the next page. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Probably also need to do a better job of ensuring that language fidelity in our programs.
And some of the programs also said, if we know, now that we know what the questions are, we can provide some guidance to our completers before they take the survey so that they understand what they're being asked, which is nice. Can every program do that? I don't know. So maybe we need to ensure, again, a little of both. Are the questions being asked of the appropriate completers? Are they being asked in a way that makes sense to those individuals?
Even looking at the 10th thing, even the teachers in the intern programs, we could be expecting somebody to go and observe them. Just because they're in an intern, they're still going to be observed, right?
But they might not know it as that, because again, we're asking the completers, so they might not understand it as observance. Their handbook might not say, you can expect during your program to be observed.
I think where it falls hard for interns is when language like master teacher is used. So when a supervisor observes, that's probably, they're going to get that, but there's other places where you found discrepancies because of language that's very specific to student teaching as opposed to intern. So there's plenty of places where that has to be explored.
Oh, for sure. And in fact, on this same page, just a couple of questions over is that student teaching issue. It's the other place where we see this dark color for the ed specialist folks, which is, and the question there is, how much time did you spend in student teaching and when you drew, right? And that's not necessarily language that they are going to feel is applicable to them as candidates. And in fact, I think this is really great. So when you drill down on this, which I just did, I clicked on this very specific question, and you can hopefully you can see, but I'll also talk to you about what we're seeing here. Over on the left-hand side of this question, we have the response, what we've asked the candidates to click on in terms of the response that's applicable. So less than 100 hours, 100 to 299, 300 to 599, 600 to 799. So 600 we know is what we're asking for, and then 800 hours or more. When you look at all of these together, we have programs falling into the areas, into the number of hours that are going to meet the standards. So this was another place where we felt like, in this particular case, do we need to reorganize the answers so that the answer that we deemed to be meeting the standard is actually number 1, and it moves down from there so that we don't end up with a tan color that suggests that programs aren't meeting the standard when we look at it and we know that they are. So again, just it's great. We've got this first year of data. We've finally got it in a system. We're taking a look at it, and now we're talking about how can we make it better. Finally, on this overall statewide, and again in this order that I think is a really great way to look at it, we've got the question that we ask candidates: how effective was your teacher preparation program? And we have here some really good feedback on this. So overwhelmingly, candidates are saying well or adequately that they felt that they were prepared by their program. So I mean, this is very positive. The color coding here on multiple subject, single subject, and ed specialist are not indicators of quality. They're just colors that we gave the program. So in some cases, some of the conversations we're having is just about the colors that we're using so that we can ensure that nobody thinks they're seeing a flag when they're in fact not. So going back to this domains and content, again, we see a lot of blue here. This is fantastic. It tells us that things are really looking well. If we want to drill down a little bit more on some of these lighter blue squares, just to see where, is this a problem with the question? Is it something we can look at in our preparation? It's something we can look at in our standards. This is a great time for me to jump over, by the way, to this other feedback that we have. Which looks like a video game. It looks a little bit like Tetris. This, along the left-hand side over here where I'm sort of running my mouse, these are institutional ID numbers. So you're not seeing the name of the institution. But this is an institutional breakdown of what we were looking at before. This is statewide data. This is on an institutional level. So this allows us to see that, again, a lot of blue. And then, right, boom, here's a little bit of red.
Right.
Okay, well, let's hover over that where somebody said, yeah, this is really great, because let me just draw your attention over here to the lower right-hand corner, which will show you the scale from 1 to 5. So again, dark blue is great, red is not so great. So we think, oh, this looks really important. This looks like maybe there might be something we need to look at here. When you hover over it, you'll see that it was a single candidate that responded. So is that really a flag? An entire program cannot be judged based on the feedback of one candidate. So this is great for us. It gives you a quick visual. And without even having to drill down hard on the program, you can just hover over this with one response. That's not something that we're not gonna dive in on that institution and start really looking at that. Over a course of a number of years, we might. If that area continues to be red, even with a single candidate a year, if it's red from year to year to year, then yes, maybe we need to look at that. So again, some of these little areas that we hovered over, just to drill down a little bit on these questions, and across the top here we've got the TPEs and then the content areas. So this is just a way to drill down on these institutional. Right. It was right here in the middle, actually, where we do see some tans and some yellows, which are not blue. And when we hover over them, we can see that we have a little bit better response rate. So in this particular one, we're seeing from 87 completers something that we may or may not want to continue to watch over some time, which is they're giving a lower rating to their preparation in teaching physical health and health, or physical education and health science. That's the same question down here, although this color's a little darker, but there's only 41 completers that responded to this one as well. This one continues. This is still that single candidate responder.
Keep scrolling. It might have been under field experience because we have the same chart for each one of these, right? I recall.
Well, field experience comes at us this way.
Okay, there was a chunk of yellow, and what I'm trying to say is one of these charts, because there's so many right now, we're trying to figure this out. One of these charts, you can clearly go down and see, this is a problem for a single institution. Or you could see, hey, this is a problem for a lot of institutions. So it's an area where, as a state, we might say we really need to think about math instruction because a lot of institutions are a lot of candidates that are coming out of programs, multiple programs, are still struggling with math instruction. So there are those kinds of things that we could figure out whether it's just a struggle for an individual institution versus whether it's really a statewide need that we need to think about and talk about more.
Right. So, and I think, Cheryl, Jake recalled that maybe this is what you're talking about. So this is in particular to single subject program completers and to their field experience. And actually, Jake did the institutional presentation at Cal Council, so he's going to jump in.
I remember that one of the topics was being prepared to prevent dropouts. That was one of the things that across the whole state, it was just much lower. And so maybe that could tell the commission that we should look for something to bring to California to have institutions send faculty to think about how can we do more about preventing dropouts. So that would be the kind of thing where we look across the state to say, okay, so this is low for everybody. So these visualizations are a nice way for us, but it's only internal now. None of this is public, so we're still really just trying to learn.
And that is a good example of how complicated this is because that came across in multiple areas, but also in the whole terminology that we were talking about because a lot of CCTEP folks said, we don't talk about dropouts. We talk about struggling students. We don't like to use the term dropouts because it seems like that's fait accompli or something that we want to talk about it in more positive terms. So maybe it's the terminology. And then others had some additional comments like, well, our multiple subject teachers, they're teaching at the lower grades, so we don't really talk about dropouts at the lower grades. So it was really interesting how complex these are, and just the words that are used in these questions are very complicated.
I did really like the PowerPoint they had put together because they had a very clear slide that said, no high-stakes decisions are being made based on this data. That is not the purpose of this. It is for the team to have it and use it to help frame their work, and possibly for staff to identify an issue at an institution and then maybe investigate that issue. But we try to make it very clear to the group at Cal Council that this is not something that's going to be publicly out there, and it's not being used to make a single decision at all.
I think, Terry, that that's a really important point because one of the first things, especially the statewide data, when we look at that, we have to ask, is it pervasive across all institutions? Or is the reason why it looks like it's for this particular topic, it's not going so well? Is it because it's spread out, or is it because in one or two institutions there's a big problem and that's where the results are? And that's why the pages that Aaron and Jake have been on are so important because that allows us to find out, is it pervasive where we can see, wow, all the way down it's yellow across multiple institutions, or it's horizontal where the issue is and it's an institution or a couple of institutions. And, there's still issues with the data. I know like all the special ed people are all together. There's not like delineation and things like that, but we're learning a lot.
We also got some feedback in some cases that on this statewide data, we asked for feedback down here on cooperating teachers. Candidates were asked to click all that apply. I'm sorry, completers, not candidates. Were asked to click all that apply. And in one case, we had some people bring up the fact that we're actually asking two questions in this question. We asked candidates to indicate whether or not their program, their cooperating teacher, frequently observed their teaching and met with them to offer feedback. Maybe those need to be two different questions. We got some really, really great feedback from the Cal Council folks. They really engaged. We had a couple of we had a couple of times where we asked them to kind of work at their tables, take a look at some data, give us their initial, what would you ask yourself about your program? What kind of data are you collecting at your institutions that you could bring alongside this data and to help give you a bigger picture of what, because you're gathering institutional data that we're not necessarily gathering. So what can you bring alongside this to give you a nice rich picture, to maybe add some more details to what we're just seeing sort of here on a statewide level? And programs really engaged in that and gave us some great feedback.
In the case of William's visit to Garden Grove, probably in looking at that institution, you're seeing dark blue across, the N is high, all those things are in place. Is that probably?
Yeah, of course. Yes.
I think we had a comment by Committee Member Alvarado.
Just a brief one. In terms of it not being high stakes, I think a good way to say it is to say that this is a flashlight and not a hammer.
All right, Committee Member Riggs.
The only thing I wonder about related to using the completer data at the institution level to not interview completers is I've been looking at our own data from my institution, and it's so helpful. By the way, it's so good to get this feedback. And I think maybe it would catch the thing that I'm concerned about, that I know when I went on visits, sometimes people were, the graduates and everybody was really pleased with their education, and they weren't pleased with the usability of, or some of the programmatic bureaucracy kinds of things, like advisement and getting into the program and all that kind of stuff. Now, I think you'd catch that still from the current students. So maybe you don't need that from the completers. I don't know, but that's just, I know that there can be a discrepancy between how happy and satisfied people are with their preparation versus how they were treated and how the campus or how the agency facilitated their entrance and exit of the program, which I think many of us struggle with, you know. And I'm not seeing questions.
No.
All right, Committee Member Forbes.
Yeah, that's causing me to have flashbacks from site visits as well. And I mean, when you think about the context in which they're completing the survey, they're about to get their credential. They're just about to hit the screen where they're going to pay for it. So there is sort of an afterglow effect, you know. And I'm not sure how well they would remember some of the kinds of questions that you're talking about, Iris. And so I think it is going to be really important to triangulate this with the candidate responses for some of those types of things, like in advising the current candidate.
All right, Committee Member Webb.
But I would say in induction they are brutally honest, and I feel that a lot of the completer data that we received, you know, from in October when we got ours, I think was truly indicative of how they felt. And like you said, questions like one that we could see is when it says, were you well matched with your, you know, the candidate? They take that at, they don't realize we're looking at content, you know, or grade level. They look at it as personality, you know. So, but, you know, again, it's something that, you know, we look at. And but I would say that I feel, at least from induction, that we do get some really good information from, because I really, the questions are very well structured because it looks at things that we would be very important. And I think also, if you do look at the program standards, we are looking at data that does inform those program standards.
All right, thank you.
Jake, did you want to add to that? You were part of the team.
I sent you the link to it. Yeah, so when we presented at CCTE, we did the statewide snapshot sort of showing how do programs look all across the state. And then we also did an activity where we gave them some printouts of one program, if you'll click on the first one, and asked them to think about how would they internalize the data that came to them. And click on the program content. It's a little wonky. There you go. So Aaron talked about the questions we asked them to think about. So the first question was, what's your first reaction when you see this data? So we gave them this, for example, looking at specific questions, and this is specific to their institution. So we wanted to know, what would your reaction be as an institution? How would you react? What other data do you have? And would you start taking action based on what you see?
One of the things that I've been thinking about is that I want to make sure we're not just collecting this data, but we're actually mining this data here, even at the statewide level, even if it's to talk about it with you all or with the commission, and to really start looking at, what are the top areas that completers feel like they're well prepared, and what are the lowest areas, and just to think about it from a whole educator community perspective, to say, hey, this is coming back to us year after year as the area where they feel the least prepared in general, and are there things that we could be doing from either a policy or a practice or whatever, so that we have those conversations here and with the commission to kind of talk about. But it's really amazing data, and of course we have Terry to thank for it, as well as the team that worked on 100 different versions of the survey. And obviously clearly we'll continue to try to improve it, but the response rates are amazing and we can finally use them. So that was the hardest part about having a goal of an outcomes-based accreditation system without outcomes data. The TPE or the TPA data we've had so far has been somewhat limited, and so once we're able to compare some of this data with the rubric level TPE data, I think we'll have some really rich outcomes data at that point.
I think also when you see trends and patterns across the state, you know where your work is that you need to do. And I think this is what everybody's saying. So we've always known that, student teaching, there's so many moving parts. Everybody kind of struggles to get it right and do better and improve and that kind of thing. But there's other places too. And I think, whether it's around something like dropouts or whether it's around school support with kids who, have unstable housing or something like that. I'm just making that up. But this shows you trends and it helps point you in the direction of doing better.
And there was the working with families. Was that one of the lowest areas, if I recall? We had highlighted that. There was one area where working with families was something that candidates felt like they needed more.
It was in this larger statewide. We didn't drill down, but there was here. Because again, these were all blue, so I was trying to find some areas where maybe there was some colors of blue that weren't as blue as others to, just show some differences. And it was over here on question number 25 in domain 6. This was the question here is their preparation to work with families to better understand students and support their learning. Now again, this is all blue, but this was one of the areas for single subject folks that they rated lower than some of the other areas, that they feel that they aren't as prepared to do this. So we had some conversations about that a little bit.
All right, any further comments? This is amazing work. I remember sitting here, it was a couple years ago, it seems like, and Terry'd be running in and out of the room to work with the developers. And now it's come to fruition, and sounds like everybody's excited and able to use it for outcomes-driven program improvement and informing about what we're doing for the students of California. So well done, and thank you both Jake and Aaron for that report. That is an information item. No action is necessary at this time. So that brings us to item 14. Do we know if we're ready for that?
Well, we have the team lead. I don't know. Do we have nobody else
we're going to go ahead and move on to item 16, which is the discussion of defining residency programs. Cheryl Hickey will begin presenting this item, and then Terry Clark will, you're going to tag team it. And we'll just, will you begin, Cheryl?
I'll start. Give Terry a second to breathe. Thanks, Terry, for coming down. We're waiting for Mills institutional folks to show up. So this issue here is about the topic of residencies and the need to define what that means in California. So many of you know that the governor's office is putting some money forward, or at least we hope it remains in the state budget by the time it gets signed, that will help seed some residencies. In particular, right now, the language is for special education, but in the future, it may be expanded depending on what the legislature
I could provide an update today.
Ooh, an update, a hot off the press update.
I got an email. I got an email early today from our legislative person who said, Tony Thurmond, he's running for superintendent, you might know. He is proposing $50 million for STEM residencies and $50 million for local solutions grants for STEM fields. The challenge is he doesn't have that money yet. So he has to find the money and be encouraging and get the money to get in that actual bill. Otherwise, it will just be like one of those other bills we've had lately where there's been a bill, but there's been no funding money. But there is already in the STEM world, so math, science, and math, a proposal, and I'm not surprised. I don't think I'd be surprised to find a bilingual proposal come from elsewhere, or who knows. So there is still another. There's already another one.
Item, Terry.
Okay, so in this item, it gave me enough time to get down here and get settled. So what we gave you in the item was a lot of information, because we can Google with the rest of them. So you have information here from Bank Street College. They have done some interesting things, and they also have some reports, and at top of page 2, guidance on sustainable teacher residencies. One of the biggest issues with teacher residencies is where they've been developed, where they've had philanthropic funding, is that they've been very, very successful, but they haven't been able to figure out how to maintain the residency. What's the philanthropic funding is gone. So this guidance on sustainable residencies for teachers and investing in residencies for LEAs. Those are two really helpful documents, I think, as we consider this. We also gave you the ESEA information about what a residency is considered, which is now still there in the Title II in the Act. We also gave you some information from the National Center on Teacher Residencies and from Learning Policy Institute. So there's a lot of different groups that have a lot of information about residencies. What we then tried to do, starting on page 3, is to pull together a number of those attributes so that they're kind of just all there for you to talk about. So if you could kind of have a discussion about residencies, and then there's like 16 different attributes that we've put there, and we'd kind of like you to discuss, yes, this should be required in a California residency. This could be something that is beneficial but is not required. We would get all this feedback from you, and then we would work on crafting a definition. Now, of course, the definition that we put out with the RFP for the residencies is going to need to align with what else is in the Ed Code. But right now, that bill is still flexible enough that everything that's in here we can make work. Did I leave anything else, Cheryl? Nope. So if you could kind of talk about your feelings of residencies, these different definitions and attributes, and then kind of talk through each of those 16. That would really help us.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Clark. I'm wondering, should we go through each one by one? Start with a strong district-university partnership must be in place. Any thoughts or comments on that? Are we in agreement that that seems like a general good starting point? Okay, all right. Well, let's go to number 2 then. Actually had a comment. Oh, yes, thank you, committee member.
So what does a strong, here we go. What does a strong district-university partnership look like, and what criteria needs to be in place to show that that's an active partnership with both entities?
All right, great question. Who's got the answer? So advisory board documents would show at least some activity, who's showing up to the meeting, the content of the meetings, that there is a partnership. MOU also comes into mind. A couple of things right there. Yes, Member Borges.
Well, another thing would be if it's a district that, like, for example, my district, we get a lot of student teachers from Cal State Fullerton. I've mentored quite a few. We have a good relationship, so I see it as something like that.
Good.
Hey, Terry, are you looking for uniqueness? So residencies are a subset of student teaching. So what things have to be in place that turns it into a residency beyond student teaching? Is that what we're aiming for, so that we can write this definition?
Definitely. We don't have a definition in our ADS yet. And one of the things we could use this definition for, our original thought was, we'll just go through this year and we'll let everyone identify whatever they have. And then we were going to pull out everything, and everyone who said they had a residency, we were going to contact them to tell us what your resident. But because we have this situation with the budget and we have to have an RFP and we have to get money out the door, it doesn't really make sense to wait that long. So we kind of have to craft a definition that would work for the ADS, and then would also be helpful as we move forward in the RFP process. I would think in this first one, they had some really great information from the NGEI work that CSU has done. And when the CSU Bakersfield and Bakersfield City School came out, there were equal voices on both sides. It was truly a partnership. So I think that, and we could work on some definition there, that there are equal voices, there's buy-in from both sides, there's agreement and commitment from both sides. All of that there, I think, is what we're looking at in number one.
So I'm a little confused. So just for a clarifying question. So I have heard residencies used to define a student teacher who stays at the same school for the whole year. I have heard residencies used to define an intern who is the teacher of record at a school that is kind of sponsoring them to get their credential, or a district. So I'm not quite sure which aspect of that we're talking about.
We were defining residencies as a student teaching model. I do know that there are some where we have, and what's the one that Cheryl, I can't think of right now, but it's a residency, and they wanted to come in, but the commission told them no. Relay Graduate School. And they do call it a residency, but what we're looking at here, and I think the foundational thing is it's one school year in length, so you're there all year. But we are not looking at this as interns, because interns is a different credential.
All right, committee member Morrow.
Thanks. Again, that definition. The usual model that comes to mind is the doctor. That's why the term residency has become popular. And in that situation, the doctor is a qualified doctor, right? So we're talking here, I always thought of qualified teachers. You're working, it's your job. You're not a student teacher waiting to get your credential. You're part of a residency. You're a qualified teacher, but you're working with teachers who have more experience than you, mentor teachers who are going to guide you and through your first year or so as teaching. Isn't that what a residency is?
I don't think in this case that term has been used that way. And it is, I think parts of the medical field are being used as the model, but without the full credential that kind of you've earned. So it's less than the full credential at this point is what we're talking about.
I think we're definitely looking from the medical model, the idea that the experienced doctor is there working with the new doctor. So the experienced teacher is there helping really guide that new teacher, but there is no, at least in this definition, there's no implication that the person is licensed. They are in the learning phase. They are pre-service still.
Committee member Riggs.
I like the model, and I'd like to see us be able to go that way. One question I have, it relates to when I think about the doctor model, they seem to rotate amongst different specialties. And here it looks like they have to stay with one mentor the entire time. So, I mean, we had this huge discussion about whether we would allow our multiple subject people to stay in one placement for their entire student teaching when the rule changed that we could do that in our advisory group, and everybody wanted us to keep it so that they had an extensive experience in upper grade and lower grade. So I just wonder about that, and does that limit the type of residency that you could have if, maybe I'm just reading it wrong, maybe it does allow for that.
I think we were thinking that 1 year in one school. If you wanted to have 2 grade levels, you could do second grade and fifth grade in the same school. I had heard about, actually from your campus, I had heard about a residency model there where they are in the same school all year, but they do a primary placement for half the year and they do an intermediate placement for the other half of the year. I think that could be considered as a residency also, if that's something that you're interested in at the same school, though. So they are in the same school environment. They're attending staff meetings, they're helping with yard duty, things like that, but they did change grade levels in the middle.
All right. Committee Member Alvarado, and then Pensaval, and then Erickson.
So that is true. That's what we're doing. And we've been working now with NCTR for a year. And so our model is where they do switch to make sure they have lower and upper elementary for multiple subject, but it remains in the same school. And in terms of the item number 1, something that was shared at NGEI that I don't know if it can be codified or what have you, but in order for this model to work, I think first explicitly stating that it excludes internships. I think you may want to say that. But what they're doing in Bakersfield is that the district is actually putting skin into this, putting skin in the game, and they're actually providing a stipend to residents that are placed within their school district. Understanding that for many candidates in many credential programs, it's cost prohibitive to do traditional student teaching. They have to work. And to be in this kind of a model means that they're putting that off for an entire year. And that's not a viable option unless there's some other kind of revenue coming in. And I don't know how this can be worded on here, but at least from the district's perspective, would they be willing, or at least a recommendation that there be some kind of financial support for students who commit to spending an entire year within that district?
So numbers 14 or 15 are on that topic.
We do something really similar. We have a primary and a secondary placement. So in the first semester, they're in a primary, and then they spend 1 day in this. It doesn't mean primary and secondary in the terms of grade levels. It just means you have your main base, and then 1 day a week you go to a different grade. And then in the second semester, that different grade becomes your main base, and you go back to your old placement 1 day a week. So it switches. So you're in each semester, you're getting most of your experience in one grade level, but you're getting a little bit more in another, and then it flips.
If you did the multiple classroom experience, then you would have more than one. It would not be one mentor's classroom then. So we'd have several mentors during the year.
Member Erickson.
So right now the funding is for special education. And if we're being creative, one of the things we might want to think about is special education and a multiple subject credential together, so that they're getting that at the same time, or those creative ways in which we might be able to think about utilizing this as a way to move the needle for the profession.
Member Forbes.
Well, I think a lot of these are really exciting ideas. As I look down the list, if I take out one or two, it could apply to one or the other of the two preliminary credential programs that we have at our university. And so I'm still kind of left with the question, what makes this different than student teaching? Right? Especially if you take out things that are really like subject to collective bargaining. For example, the salary or stipend, financial support to the candidates, how would that play out in different local districts? And so I guess I'm still kind of back at the question, like, the commission is involved in this because we want to know how people define their residencies in order to understand our data, or because we have money that we could help, like in the case of the RFPs that have already gone out. I guess I'm still kind of wondering like what we're trying to accomplish.
I think we're trying to do two things. We're trying to get a definition of residency that all programs in California can use, so that when we're talking about a residency, we're talking about kind of the same animal, is one thing. The second thing is that we do have this $50 million that is set to need to go out to the door, and we do need a definition to deal with the RFP. So it is there's multiple purposes for this.
So just following up on that, then we would possibly, I think maybe this already happened in the ADS as I tried to enter the data and it asked us, did the data system ask us if we had a residency or not? Okay, right. I knew.
The problem is that
in other words, we need a definition for that so we know that people are,
talking
have reliability about what kinds of things are being answered.
Okay, Committee Member Alvarado.
So, I think the list is great, what you have there. I think that there's some items that I personally would say they don't absolutely have to be. And I'm torn in one particularly. That's item number 3. In that in general ed, it makes perfect sense. In special ed, you have sometimes well-prepared master teacher in special ed. You can't have a cohort if it's only one.
Talk to us, can you have a cohort in a district? In special ed, could we look at this in general ed that there would be a cohort at the school, but in a district, could we think about it as a district type cohort?
I think that could be the solution, because obviously there's multiple special ed teachers within a district, but not necessarily multiple special educators within one school.
Mm-hmm. Why distinguish a cohort?
The research shows that when you have a cohort of candidates moving through the program together, they are universally more successful than if they're doing it individually.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking about this term with diverse learners because of many of our districts in California might not have the kind of diverse learners that some of our districts have. And does this mean that they can't participate if they don't have that diverse set of learners? What does diverse mean? Is it, if we're talking special ed versus some of the other?
We define diverse learners as we talk with team members or institutions, all the things about the characteristics that make us human: male, female, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, language. And really, number 2, we require for our teacher prep programs in general. So that is kind of a no-brainer in California. We would definitely be wanting to look at places that are really great learning environments. And in special ed, I would think we would still look across all those same kind of attributes.
Great. Member Alvarado?
I actually, I'm glad that's on there in that, the research clearly shows that brand new teachers tend to go to those districts that are most diverse, serving high-risk populations. So I think this is absolutely necessary. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, and maybe this sounds too, drilling it down to be too specific, but does it call out within that diversity English learners, which is also a very important part of our credentialing? Because our candidates have to have experience in English learners.
That is included in diversity.
So in other words, our existing definition from the preconditions and common standards would be the glossary that could support that.
Yeah. Yes, Ms. Carney.
So I'm hearing some things from all of you that, are for all of our teachers. And then I'm hearing some other things, especially from you, about here's the difference between student teachers and interns. Student teachers and residents. Because we know the difference between student teachers and interns. There's some places where they're not the same. So to get a clean definition, because we don't say that they're synonymous, maybe it would be helpful to instead of looking at just this list, is what makes a resident different than a student teacher? Maybe that, because I heard duration. I heard a little bit about compensation, so I think I'll stop talking because there's an idea.
Sorry about this. What I see as one absolute difference is that sometimes a placement is constrained by the university's calendar, academic calendar, whereas a residency, it's entirely the district's calendar. That is, the resident shows up the first day the master teacher shows up, and they don't finish until the last day the master teacher finishes. And that's not explicitly stated on here, but I think it needs to be.
That kind of information
Thank
helps
you.
us with the definition. Thanks.
All right, Member Borges and then Member Briggs.
Well, along with that, the compensation, but it also, I think I saw here that it says a commitment to remain within the district for 3 to 5 years, so that's teacher retention. And if you can get someone to last that long, they usually don't go away.
So those are ones that I struggle with because I think they're good practice, but should it be a requirement? I'm just asking. Okay.
Do you have your...
That's the question. That's the question for sure.
Okay, Member Briggs.
I'm just also trying to distinguish between student teaching and residence, and again looking to the doctor model. In student teaching, I think it's a challenge sometimes to get our students enough opportunity to assess students summatively. They do a lot of formative assessment, and they may do some grading of quizzes and so forth. But the best program I was ever a part of was years ago, where we had a partnership with the district when they were trying to reduce their numbers. It was 20-to-1 ratio at the time, and so they had this thing that was eventually said we could not do it, or they couldn't do it anymore, where they were using our interns. So they were hiring interns, and those interns had responsibility for 10 students from this teacher and 10 students from this teacher to officially evaluate through the year. So they had their own roster, but they were shared between 2 teachers. So I think about the sharing thing, all of that. I just felt like what was different from my student teachers is they had official sanction for certain students. And in student teaching, they do have responsibility for the whole class as we meet the 4-week thing that, and we've always done that. But it's still not the same level of assessment responsibility that I see in resident doctors. And when we think about trying to prepare these people for taking a job, I don't know. I'm just wondering if that could be some kind of component. It's like I'm not just co-teaching, because sometimes people don't put in the assessment aspect into the teaching word, even though it should be a part of that. You know what I'm trying to say here? So I don't know. I would think that the districts might want to allow these folks to take on more responsibility for assessment than a typical student teacher, because they're longer, the duration, they're working closely with those teachers that they're assigned all year, they know the students better. I don't know. It seems like we're missing an opportunity if we don't somehow get that in there.
All right, Member Morrison, thank you.
Hi, I'm still a little confused about not using the medical model for residency, and if we're not, then we should just use a different term, because it's confusing if we don't. And the idea that we could, I like the idea of teachers being paid to do this, but if the payment is in exchange for a commitment to spend 3 years in the district, does that guarantee that if you're a resident, you have a job at the end of your residency? Maybe that's what defines a resident, that the district agrees to hire you if it's a successful residency, and then you could add that clause at the end of it. But I know in my district, most student teachers are not being hired. Would most residents go through a residency and then not be hired as well?
All right, thank you. Ms. Carney, and then Member Alvarado, please.
I was trying to capture your thoughts, Iris, Committee Member Riggs, sorry. Is this what you had in mind? Something along the lines of share the full range of experiences, including planning, grading, communication with families, whatever else we think of, with the teacher of record. So that would be something that would be different than a student teacher. And then the other thing, as you're talking about compensation, it is possible to put in that there's compensation without us telling a district how to compensate. So just to keep that in mind. So we don't have to determine that it's like a promise of a job or although I love that idea, or a kind of a payback of time. We can just say that, if that's where you're headed, you don't have to define it.
Yes, Member Alvarado.
So I think in coming up with a definition, we're currently engaged in multiple searches, personnel searches, and I think the one way to look at it is to say that there are minimum requirements and then there are preferred sort of add-ons. And that's where that can come in. In the Bakersfield model, for example, the student teaching or the residency happens 4 days out of the week, and then the 5th day, they actually hire them as subs, in which they actually can go in and observe them. So they're actually getting paid for being the sub at the same district where they're getting to be observed and so on. So there's ways, and that can be one of those sort of add-ons that it's not a minimum requirement, but it would be preferred, let's say.
And on the side of that, a different dean from CSU also shared that if the university ends up with that money, it just dollar for dollar reduces their student aid. So the university can't be where that money source comes from. But if the employer can figure out a way to do it, then it doesn't reduce their student aid.
All right, Ms. Carney.
So I have another question for you all to ponder. So we have 300,000 students in California that are in federally designated rural schools. So whenever I'm starting to think about definitions or hear about kind of requirements, I want to make sure that the question gets asked at least, is there opportunity to serve rural as well as urban schools? Does anything that you're thinking about eliminate that? I think broadening the sense of cohort helps, because cohort can also be structured through the university. It doesn't have to be all at one, there's different, this is my dissertation, cohort, so it's near and dear to my heart. But so is there anything that, as you think about this, I would just say think about rural and urban and suburban.
So I do have experience in working with cohorts in Imperial County, one school districts. And so what we did there actually, and Terry, this goes back to cohorts within districts, that I think that sometimes you have to consider consortia or district consortia, especially to address the rural where they can pool resources and it'd be viewed as one unit and still a cohort. Because otherwise we're going to leave out a lot of those really tiny school districts, and we don't want to do that.
Yes, Member Erickson.
As you were talking, I was just thinking about the challenge we have, I think all universities have, or institutions that are preparing education specialists, in finding quality placements with cooperating teachers who have experience. I'm just going to lay that out there because we're gearing up for this $50 million grant, and we don't always are able to find those classrooms or the co-teachers that we want to put those kids with. And how might we use this? I'm thinking about districts that might be facing challenges to support that in the smaller districts, but as well the making sure that these placements are really valuable to the.
So in the definition, would you define who who they're placed with differently than what's currently in the standards? Is there a need to go beyond that in any way, or I'm not quite sure where you're going?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I just know that it's difficult to find placements, and if we're going to use this residency model to really move the needle, and out of this comes quality teachers who will be able to sustain this type of program.
We're already thinking that a vast majority of the districts in the state are not ready for this. We need to figure out a way for some planning grants, and we're working with the administration and even maybe some philanthropic organizations to figure out some planning grants. Bakersfield City is ready to write a grant proposal. They know what they want to do, and they can write a really good proposal. But a lot of other LEAs I don't think are ready. So we're looking at some smaller amount that could release some people for some time to work across the two entities to really develop a plan to identify those mentor teachers, master teachers, to get them some training and get them ready, because it is essential that these are your top-notch people. These are not just people off the street. These got to be really, really effective people.
Member Webb, and then Member Riggs.
As I'm listening to this, and I really like it. I think it has some really great qualities. I wonder though, and Terry, I'm glad you brought up the point that I don't think every district is ready, because in some regards, I could see people say, well, I'm going to be an intern because I can get paid, I can get benefits, I can get so many things, and really, even though they're not really on the track for permanency status, they can, eventually, if you look at the timeline in Ed Code, it could work to their benefit to become, if we start looking at that. So I think we also have to really think about what distinguishes this from the advantages of being an intern, because a lot of times principals, when they hear that someone's interested in becoming a teacher, they will explore that intern route to assist in getting that teacher placed, because that's who they want to have in their school. So that's another thing I think we need to really consider as we're looking at this.
Member Riggs?
There has been an announcement that was sent out. There's a car in a reserved parking place. Does anyone in here have a maroon CRV? Because if you do, you need to move your car. Nope, good, excellent, because otherwise it could get towed. Sorry.
I did, when I think about the question that you just asked, it popped into my head about the integrated programs. So the undergraduates, I see that as long as those aren't omitted from this, if they're still eligible at some point, then you have people who can't intern but are still in their integrated undergraduate program. So that might be a pool of people here. But then aside from that, the other issue that I wonder about, and I suppose it would just come in the MOU, is sometimes with student teachers, because we've got an extra adult who's available, it would have to just be very clear that these people are here and assigned to this position, and so when subs don't show up or something happens, they can't just be the go-to person to pull out, something like that. Especially when I think about having a cohort there, it just.
All right. Do you feel like you have?
I'm close. I'm almost there. What I did, based on your conversation, is I've taken the 16 things in the item. I've already moved them to a Word document. I put them in a table. I have a column for student teaching. I have a column for residency that says required and a column for residency that says preferred. So now I would like you, if possible, could you talk about items 12, 13, 14, 15, 16? Are those yes for residencies, they're required, or are they preferred? From your conversation, I've gotten a lot of the others, but I need you to just talk about those few.
Member Erickson?
If we're going to include the undergraduates, number 12 is not possible. Preferred.
I think, and number 13, do they have to commit to teach for 3 to 5 years? Is that a requirement? Right? I don't think it has to be a requirement. That would be an agreement with the district. Mm-hmm.
Terry, excuse me for a second. Can an undergraduate be included given the requirement for subject matter prior to being in a classroom?
Yeah, if they have subject matter.
No, okay.
They have to have subject matter.
So it's how far along in the integrated program?
It would be their senior year, and they hopefully have subject matter satisfied earlier.
And then the salary stipend during the residency, I see that as an option.
From your conversation, I already put it's not required for student teaching. It's not required for the residency. It is preferred.
Right.
So from your conversation, I've gotten a lot of these done. There's just some I haven't.
And then, all right, and then Member Alvarado?
So on number 13, I think that there has to be a qualifier on there. That is, if they receive support from the district has the right of first refusal, meaning that they're not bound to hire them, but they have the right to hire them, have first shot at the candidate. And that, I think, would be seen as beneficial from the district's perspective, that they're not feeling like they're being forced to hire someone, but they still have the option of saying no.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing it more from the candidate's side. Maybe I'm not sure that they want to teach there. They're doing their residency for a year, but because that's where they can get a residency or it's the location, but to have to commit to 3 to 5 years when they complete.
That's where the qualifier comes in.
As a condition of participating in the residency, I don't know that needs to be a requirement.
Yeah.
Well, the LEA is going to have to put up $20,000 to match the $20,000 the state is giving. So on the other hand, I would say I think the LEA has the right to say, if we supported you for 3 years, you have to teach here 3 years.
Oh, I think the right for sure. Is it a requirement that it's part of?
That's what we're trying to. So you're saying it should be no for required, but preferred it could be yes.
Exactly, best practice. And I think, most of the time, best practice, people want the teachers that they're putting their money into, and the teachers have the integrity to maintain that practice. Financial support for candidates is provided in exchange. We just talked about induction support for completers. Inductions are requirement. So,
well, this is from a statewide definition, and there are definitions where they say you do not have a teacher residency program at your university if you do not also commit to support them for the first 2 years of their teaching when they're in the field. Now, in California, we have a different program that does that, so I don't know that we actually want to require that at all. I think that should probably be a no, because there are other induction programs.
Okay, Member Pensable?
So I'm a little confused, and maybe I just missed this in the conversation. So if a district is putting up $20,000 to match the other $20,000, where's that $40,000 going?
Some of it to the candidate for a living stipend, some of it to the university to pay for tuition. It'll all be gone. And the $40,000 that the LEA is putting up is undoubtedly not going to be cash. It is going to be in kind for. They're going to have their administrators teaching in the program, things like that. So there's not really going to be $40,000 in cash there, but there will be $40,000 worth of value for that candidate, for each candidate.
All right. Gary?
I think I actually added 3 more things to the 16 that we had already had, and I have the table filled out. Thank you. Makes me happy.
Thanks for your work on this. All right, so thanks everyone. This is not an action item. It's only for information. So, yeah, she's taken action, the table queen. All right, so we are going to move to which item, Cheryl? Fairfield, which would be item 15, the report of the accreditation team site visit to Fairfield Suisun Unified School District. Consultant Lynette Roby will introduce this item. Joining her virtually is team lead Christine Cisco, and at the table, institutional representative Melissa Farrar, director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? No? Ms. Roby, will you begin, please? Okay.
Hi, I'm here. Christine Cisco. Can y'all see me and hear me?
Hi, Christine. Yes, we can
Hi,
see you.
Christine.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm waving. She can't see me.
I can see you. You're really teeny, but I can see you.
Okay. Okay. So good afternoon. It is my pleasure to introduce this agenda item regarding Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District's accreditation site visit. I'd like to first thank Melissa Farrar, who is Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District's Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, and she is sitting next to me here, for hosting the Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District Accreditation Site Visit, which was held March 5th through the 7th. I'd also like to thank the site visit team lead, Christine Cisco, who is on camera. She's from Stanislaus County Office of Education. She did a wonderful job overseeing the work of the site visit team. The team we had two team members, Mary Reese from Palmdale School District and Julie Sheldon from Walnut Valley Unified School District, who were both very dedicated and focused on the work prior to and during the visit. The team arrived on Monday, March 5th, and followed a short meeting. They moved to the district office where interviews were held. The interviews continued on Tuesday, and the report of findings were read to the institution on Wednesday morning. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christine, who will then present the report and the highlights of the visit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for the virtual stand-in today, but I'm actually in San Diego for one of my other hats that I wear. So first, I would like to thank Dr. Melissa Farrar and her staff for their hospitality, organization, and availability. Because accreditation visits are intense and rigorous, they really ensured that the needs were met of our team, and we appreciate that they were really instrumental in making sure that our rigorous process for ensuring education prep programs meet the standards was adhered to. Dr. Farrar's dedication and commitment to the development of professional practice was evident throughout this review. The staff that she's been able to hire has further benefited the program and ultimately has increased the quality and capacity of their district induction program. The growth mindset and positive collaborative culture are pervasive throughout this district, from the superintendent to the interaction of the Human Resources Division, the Education Services Division, site administration, and the induction program. This is evidenced by the commitment to cognitive coaching, which has been developed and shared, and it's a central focus on the best practices. The leadership in this district models the exact behavior and expectations for all educators in that district. The main thing that stands out about Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District is the extensive impact that the induction program is having on the new teachers and the district culture in general. The two standards within the report, Common Standard 4 and Program Standard 5, which were met with concern, are already recognized by the program staff, and a plan is in place for addressing those concerns. Investing in your teachers lets them know that they are a valuable part of the larger system and keeps everyone focused on the ultimate mission, which is serving students. The sense of community that has been established at Fairfield-Sassoon is a shared vision. An integral part of the site visit is to conduct interviews to gather information regarding the program and perceptions and experiences of all stakeholders. I'd like to share with you just a few of the comments shared during the interview process regarding the impact that induction has had. One of the principals, who actually was a former inductee himself, actually called the program, he said, the induction is a network of guardian angels. One of the early completion option candidates actually said that the communication and collaboration with their CT or mentor kept me on a forward-moving trajectory in my work with students. And finally, the superintendent of Fairfield-Sassoon said, "I am so happy that we're able to be a district with a Cadillac version of induction." So with that, we would like to recommend that Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District be fully accredited as outlined in our report.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Cisco. I'd like to invite the Institute, Dr. Farrar, to make any comments. I'll remind you that this is not a time to argue the findings, but to add to the report or share any comments you'd like to with the committee.
Perfect. I would just like to say a quick thank you to our visiting committee and to our chairperson, Ms. Roby, because it's kind of stressful being green sometimes in the accreditation cycle. A lot of it has felt like creating while flying in terms of making sure that we've got the changes that we need and everything done. And the fact that we've been able to really articulate our program both to the commission but also to our candidates has been really one of the things that we've worked really strongly in. We really do strongly believe in making sure that our folks are receiving the exact things they need, the exact times they need them, and we've really tried to structure our program around that just-in-time support for our folks. So I was meeting with our cluster area folks earlier in the week, and some of them were questioning, well, how do you do just-in-time PD for people? For us, that looked yesterday like all of our candidates coming together. We had 17 different tables, and they were able to choose different topics to be able to go around and hear about and learn about different aspects based on what they needed right then and there. The feedback we've already started to receive from that has spoken to, oh my gosh, I can use this in my classroom right now. I can do this tomorrow. I'm doing this right now. And so in building our program, that's really something that we've really strived to do, and I'm really pleased that it's been able to come through both in the report and both in how our candidates feel about the support that they receive while here. It's important to us that we retain our teachers, but that our teachers really get what they need to be successful both in the classroom as educators, but also for our students, which is our ultimate goal. So thank you so much for letting us be green and a part of this process. It's been awesome for us to be able to take this chance to grow our own practice and really look at how we can continue to do better for our teachers that we support.
Thank you. I think Kermit would say you're in good company.
It is my favorite color. It's my birthstone, so I have a strong affinity to green. So
that's great. That's terrific. Well, thank you. I'd like to provide the committee this opportunity right now to share your thoughts, compliments, kudos. If you have any clarifying questions at this time. I'll say congratulations. It sounds like a wonderful program. Very excited about your PD yesterday. I'm already worrying in my own head, thinking, oh, that sounds like a really good idea. Kind of this CLC just in time, self-identified areas of need. It's always at the forefront of our mind when we're training teachers. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, Member Erickson.
Also, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
A great report. On page 8, under Standard 5, determining candidate competence, there was a met with concerns, and I was just wondering if you could update us on what plans you've put into place and what the process will be, if you've already started that, where you're going from here.
Absolutely. We've already, so historically we've been a completion-oriented program, and so it's really stretched us to really start to think about what does that mean for us as in terms of recommending folks. And so we've already, as a group, my consulting teachers and I have started to talk about, well, how does that look when our consulting teachers are also teachers and can't be evaluative, and yet as a program we need to evaluate. And so we're talking about different ways for our candidates to be able to show and document their growth, increasing that reflective piece throughout, so we're able to identify where folks are in the beginning of their program, how they're feeling about both their skills and what we're seeing, versus in the middle versus at the end, and really helping to use that document to be able to show those growths around the CSTPs. We're also looking at conversations around, well, how much growth? And that one's really tricky to be able to identify. And so really looking to see if we can find some happy medium around putting some targets in for our candidates and helping make sure that they're aware of those, and then helping support them through their initial practice to achieve those. We're really blessed to have some strong partnerships with our site administrators, and so we're hoping that the development of the ILP and including our administrators more and more in that process will also help support that piece for our candidates to make sure that as a whole organization, we feel really strongly about who we're recommending for the clear credentials in our programs. You're welcome.
All right, yes, Member Alvarado.
So my question is on Common Standard 4, continuous improvement. So I understand this is the first time going through the cycle, but
Correct.
your program has been in operation since 2003?
Correct.
Okay, so my question is, in terms of what had you been doing to this point? And it seems like you have a plan now to address that, but how were you ensuring that the program was responsive to the needs of participants and to make adaptations to the program prior to this?
Prior to, there had been a lot of reliance along the state survey. We had, and receiving the feedback from that and using that to be able to make changes. We had some transfer with our credentials analyst, and so we actually, this last year, had a lag time in the results from that. And so we've had to think of some new structures for being able to do that. Because we also work with a small group of consulting teachers, the feedback that they receive individually from their participating teachers has helped to drive the overall goal and expectation of the program. What we've done in the last year or so has really been to systematize that and make sure that it's got a structure and a support for ongoing continuous improvement. So we've put in a place for after every seminar to be able to send out feedback, both anonymous and solicited. So people are more likely to be super honest about how they felt about something if they know their name's not attached to it, so that we can see really what people are thinking, as well as providing them opportunities throughout the program to be able to talk about specifically how the program is or is not meeting their needs. We review that then as a team and use that information to make changes going forward. And so it's really starting to just put those systems in place so that it's more than just anecdotal data or things that we hear from people, but that we have record of it.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, this is an action item. Do I have you have a comment? Yep, all right. Member Webb?
Yes, thank you. I have a question about your completer data. You said that there was a lag in receiving. Could you explain that?
It's not a lag in receiving. It's just when we had a shift over in our credentials analyst who clicks the button in the computer that sends the recommend to the state. And so getting the right people on the right list to be able to click that button took us a little bit of time. So when that button submitted this year was late, and as a result, our completer data survey will be included in this year's results, not last year's results. And so we've gone through and made sure that our credentials analyst has all the right permissions and has all the right trainings, and that we've gone through all of our lists and made sure that no deadlines were missed for candidates, and that everybody's up to speed. We've also checked our processes on how we go through and make those recommendations and submissions to make sure that there is no longer a lag time between what's expected and what's anticipated and who's supposed to be doing what. This process has actually helped support that and making sure that there's clear communication between my department and the Human Resources Department, and checking on and ensuring that all candidates are receiving information in a timely manner so that their credentials are not expiring and needing to do emergency credentials to be able to complete when we're dealing with a paperwork situation.
Okay. The reason I wanted to get clarification is because I saw on the table that you had 60 completers, but I noticed that only 2 were interviewed. And I know that that was concerning to me. And I don't know if that's really a question for the team lead or the state consultant, but I would have expected, kind of like from a previous report that we heard from, if we know that the level of response rate is very high, we would then, allow that to be generated. But in the absence of a response rate, I'm just asking that question.
We only had
Part of another conversation, isn't it?
Right.
Really. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We had two of the completers joined us for the interviews in that regard. They were all invited. I know that Dr. Ferrara had put out the invitation and asked them all to join us, but two only accepted the invitation and came. But in conjunction with all of the other candidate interviews that we did and all of the other interviews with administration, et cetera, we really felt that there was a pervasive, strong system of support in place, and that, knocking on doors and calling in more completers in, the midnight hour kind of a thing wouldn't necessarily yield us different results. So we really felt strongly in what we had heard from all candidates, all administration, all of the district, that it is such a pervasive culture that having a few more completers really wouldn't have changed that viewpoint.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question, was that there were 30 schools, but only 5 site administrators. So I was just wondering, are they around the district? So there's several school sites in which candidates have been assigned?
Yes. So our candidates do come from all of our school sites. I believe it is. Our candidates do attend or participate in every single school. All site administrators were invited to participate, but if you've ever tried to get 30 site administrators in a room at one time for a meeting on time in the afternoon, it's pretty difficult. Part of that was a logistical challenge, just because of the time of day. It ended up kind of right near the end of the school day. In order for us to be able to meet the timeline for the committee, it could have been scheduled at a different time, and maybe we would have had some more folks, but that wasn't the decision at this time with our schedule.
And it was interesting with the 5 principals that we did have, one administrator has 27 out of 28 probationary teachers at her site. And of those 27 probationary, 14 were in induction. So we actually had a larger representation by that principal of the candidate pool than many principals would have. She really has a stacked deck at that school site, so she gave us a lot of valuable input.
Okay, thank you. All right, wait time. How's everybody doing? Okay, this is an action item. Do I have a motion? A motion by Member Pensaval.
I move that we accept the recommendation for accreditation.
All those, second by Co-Chair Felly. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. See you in 7 years.
Thank you,
Christine. Thanks, Melissa.
Okay, we are going to move to item 17, which is the report of accreditation site visit to the Los Angeles County Office of Education.
Jake just went outside to go get the team lead because she has the dog, if you recall. I said that this morning. So they've been waiting out in the parking lot. So
Show dog.
if you could give us just a couple of minutes.
Yep.
Apparently the dog got into some water.
It's a dog. I don't see a dog.
Thank you, Carol. Come on in.
Oh, there he is.
Okay, good. Come on. Right next to Tom. How's that?
A beautiful dog. In the hallway over there.
I know.
A beautiful dog. Bring it. Yes.
All right, Administrator Cheryl Hickey will introduce this item. Joining her at the table is Team Lead Carol Hodges and and institutional representatives Mary Dolan and Tom Leverin. Anyone need to recuse themselves? We have Member Morrison and Member Webb will be recused. And Member Pensaval also recusing.
Do we have a quorum still? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes.
Okay, we have a quorum. All right, Ms. Hickey, will you begin, please?
Yes, thank you. I want to first start by thanking Carol Hodges for serving as the team lead and the institution. Thank you to Mary Dolan and Tom Leverin for all the work that they did, and thank you for braving the airlines and the crazy weather today to come up here. So this visit took place February 25th through 28th in Downey, California at the headquarters of Los Angeles County Office of Ed. It, as you see, has a large number of programs with a large number of candidates. So we had a fairly large team. We had 7 individuals, plus myself as the consultant, as well as Jake Schuller joined me. Jake is, at the end of the season, will have been on 3 accreditation visits, so he will take over next year as one of the lead consultants. So excited about that. We did have some challenges. We lost a reviewer to the flu on the morning of the first day. That person was supposed to be reviewing all the district intern programs plus the added authorizations. So that put us in a little bit of a bind. We had the very first team meeting was to reorganize the interview schedule to figure out who can cover interviews and who would be willing to do what and what we could do. So that was a challenge, but the team was fantastic. They really all pitched in, especially our team lead, to really cover those and make sure that we were making sure that all the constituencies that had been invited and were there to talk to us about the programs would be heard. We also had another challenge in that you heard from Tulare County this morning, just understanding the origins of the program. San Joaquin County Office of Ed had a district intern program, and Tulare County and Los Angeles County were partners that the partnership sort of Los Angeles and Tulare then had their own programs. So there was a little bit of difficulty because that separation occurred right when the program assessment documents were due. So the teams really had to do a little bit more digging to understand the programs than normal, but they did a great job as well. So there's a little bit of complexity to their origin. And then, of course, the last thing is just the sheer size of Los Angeles County and the numbers of candidates, particularly in their designated subjects programs, near 1,800 candidates, that kind of thing. It was just really huge, huge numbers. So I will turn it over to Carol Hodges to talk about the report. Oh, can you place the mic so we can record it? Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'll start again. Hi, I'm Carol Hodges. I was a team lead and was a wonderful visit. I want to thank the Los Angeles County Office of Education folks for the preparation they did. They had an amazing website where they put just everything up that we needed. I want to thank my team members, Brad Damon, Adora Fisher, who also came down with the flu in the middle of the visit, Lisa Darling Daniels, Connie Best, and R.D. Nordgren for the work they did, and of course Cheryl and Jake Schuller, who supported us as CTC team members. So we were at LA County Office of Ed in February. As Cheryl mentioned, the size and scope of this program is vast. They have over 3,000 candidates enrolled across all their credential programs. Some of the programs are specific to the LA Basin area, going north to Santa Clarita and as far south as Long Beach, and east into the desert communities. The beginning teacher induction and administrative services credentials partner with over 80 school districts. And then the county office program itself partners with numerous charter schools, non-public schools, private schools, and of course, as Cheryl mentioned, their designated subjects credential programs span the state. So it was quite a program to review. So I think you've seen everything they offer. Multiple subject, single subject ed specialists, mild, moderate, moderate, severe. The early childhood special ed are all intern programs. They have the added authorization in the autism spectrum and early childhood special ed, and then induction programs in general ed, so the multiple subject, single subject ed specialists and clear administrative services credentials, and of course the 3 designated subjects, career tech ed, adult ed, and supervision and coordination. So prior to the visit, we reviewed everything, the program standards, the common standards, all the documents and artifacts they provided us electronically. We interviewed a large number of people, both in person and on phone. So these covered everybody. I mean, everybody connected with LA County Office of Ed and their programs, all the P12 personnel with whom they interact, advisory board members, and based on the findings, we recommend that the team recommendation was accreditation with a 7th year report. And that comes down to 2 things. First, in the common standards. All the common standards were met with the exception of Common Standard 1, which is institutional infrastructure to support education preparation, which was met with concerns. And if you have a copy of the full report, you can see the whole rationale on page 33. So the interesting thing about this program is their credential programs are in 3 different divisions of LA County Office of Ed. So they're not all together as a single unit. So they're in 3 different divisions with division heads, but who should be the unit leader is their Chief Human Resources Officer, and that position is currently vacant. It has had 2 people in it for a short period of time leading up to the visit. In fact, on our previous visit, when I went down, I met the person who was introduced, and then she said, "I'm leaving next week." I was like, okay. So part of the challenge that the 3 programs, face is the fact that they really don't have a unit person, a unit lead to advocate for them across, for budget and other reasons. And so the team really felt that while they had done a wonderful job, that we really need to see that unit person in place and how it's going to support the programs going forward. I know that they are anticipating getting a job posting up in the next 8 months to 10 months perhaps. And so we felt if we could go back in a year and see where they were with that would help with Common Standard 1. Program standards across all multiple subject, single subject ed specialists, mild, mod, severe, the early childhood special ed, the intern programs, the added authorizations, all the induction programs, and the designated subject supervision and coordination, all their standards were met. And so the two concerns that were met with concerns were in the designated subject career tech ed, where 13 of the 16 program standards were met. 3 program standards were met with concerns, Standard 1, Standard 6, and Standard 7. And in the full report, those are detailed on pages 24 and 25. Those concerns really dealt with the inclusion of the teaching performance expectations across the program in materials that were used to evaluate the students or the candidates and used to measure competency in the TPEs. They weren't used as well as we thought they could be, and candidates and alums weren't really familiar with them. Also, there wasn't a lot of candidate knowledge or use of the California standards for the teaching profession, which we thought was something that the standards indicated. And so we felt that looking at the program again and how those were used would be important. For the designated subject adult education, 11 of the 13 program standards were met. 2 program standards were met with concerns. You can find those on page 28. One was Program Standard 8. The other was Program Standard 10. Concerns there were particularly around assignments and resources on how to adapt the curriculum and instruction to accommodate students with special needs, and also how to address the needs of English language learners. It was actually possible in that program to complete the program without having a requirement that talked about how to work with English language learners. So those were the concerns. In speaking with the program at the end, some of these were recognized, and the program was happy to begin working on them. So based on all that, the recommendation was accreditation with the 7th year follow-up. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. I'd like to provide the Institute an opportunity right now to clarify or provide the committee with any information you'd like to share with us. This is not a time to argue the findings of the report. All right.
You can press the button.
Good afternoon, everybody. We were really happy with the visit. It was epic. It was big. Getting ready for it was overwhelming. When Cheryl and Carol and Jake and the team came on the first afternoon, I told them as I was getting ready and we wanted to kind of give them a little overview of who we are, the image I kept thinking is we're like the Costco of educator preparation. You know, we do things in vast quantities. And the challenge is when you do something with that size, you want to make sure that you do it Costco-like, that everybody is happy and they're going to come back and they'll be happy customers and they'll have a sense that they got great quality, and doing all of that is challenging. Actually, going into the accreditation visit was complex for us in so many ways. As Cheryl described, we brought some programs to the visit, having sponsored them and served and done it for a while. Others we had taken from another entity and then made our own of them, and then we also did it at a time when the standards were changing. Mm-hmm. So there were so many pieces that were in flux, and we fall into that category of accreditation visits that span 2 sets of standards. So we had a biennial report that spoke to a reality that didn't exist anymore in our induction programs and things like that. So we tried to really come to the visit with a spirit of transparency, that we were going to show this is who we are. We tried to get as many people as we could to come, and I think we did well in that respect. Mm-hmm. But we really wanted to be able to show this is who we are, and then get some really good feedback so that we could make sure that we could move on from the visit and even up our game and do a better job. So we were really happy, and we felt that it was a very fruitful, productive event for us. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was Mary Dolan, correct?
Yes.
And then next to you we have Tom Leverin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us here today. I just want to say that considering the fact that it's such a big process, having the team being well prepared that came to visit us and helping us facilitate what needed to happen was a big help. Having experienced individuals knowing what they're doing and kind of guidance of what needs to happen was great. So that helped us as a team, not just, kind of running around what's happening next, this and that. So we kind of knew what to expect and how the order of things were going to happen. So that kind of calmed us down, because obviously it takes a lot of work and effort into doing this, and we're the ones that are being evaluated. So you can imagine the level of anxiety that can happen in some instances. But I think that having this particular team made a big difference in that aspect of the process. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. And Dr. Hodges, did you have something?
Mary mentioned about their desire to make sure that everybody they served came away pleased. I have to say that I don't know that I've ever been on a visit where the level of customer service that they provide to their candidates, that they provide to the stakeholders, was commented on so much. As a team, we got to the point where literally we knew what people were going to say, how wonderful they were, that no matter who they called, that person would help them. Nobody ever passed them off to somebody else. And so I just think we should compliment them for a program that is that vast. To not have anybody say, well, nobody ever helped me, was just amazing. And so the customer service that they provide is incredible, and they should get kudos because they're a small group serving a huge number of people. So as a team, we were very pleased and honored, and actually commented that, it might be a fun group to work for.
Thank you. Yeah, the numbers are a bit staggering.
Yes, they are.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the Committee on Accreditation to make comments or ask any other clarifying questions at this time. Yes, Member Riggs.
Well, congratulations, especially on that last comment, because that is amazing. If you've got so many folks happy with the help and support that they're getting from you, I wish we could all accomplish that so well. My question relates to the TPEs part, and it really, I think, is for you as the team lead, as to, because when I read it, it sounds very concerning to me. So I'm thinking that the team must have felt like, because the TPEs are the foundation, right? They're the foundation of the program, and so if the candidates don't know the TPEs, it seems as though they're not really in this program because they're working off of something else. And it could be that you felt like it was related to the timing, because I'm not familiar with the timing of when they came into place for CTE. So it just is like, I'm trying to think, how did you as a team justify when you couldn't find candidates that even knew that they were working on the TPEs? How could you still justify that it was met with concerns? Yeah.
So when we looked at it, I guess our comment was minimal evidence of aligning the competencies with the TPEs was one of the concerns. Everything was linked to the program standards. And so they really had done a great job of measuring the program standards. But the TPEs seemed to be, while they were there wasn't a really good working knowledge of them. In talking with the program lead, we felt that this was one of the areas that they were working, they kind of recognized that and were working toward it. And so the team just felt that at that point, given the evidence, that yes, the TPEs would be important. We have new TPEs coming in, that maybe just that transition was the challenge. And just to see the work they were doing. So while we were concerned, we weren't beyond met with concern. I don't know if that helps you or not, but just from the discussion with the students, we felt that they were getting the skills they needed. They just didn't know the label to stick with the skills. So it's kind of like, what is that? They could tell us what the skill was, but they didn't link it to this is TPE number 2.
Yeah.
And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure how many of us have candidates who can do that anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it with the new TPEs.
It was like a 6 degrees of separation kind of thing. They can kind of see that there were pieces of it there, but there was no explicit alignment. So they weren't completely convinced that it was 100% across the board kind of thing. So that's why, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? This is an action item.
Can I just say one more thing? I just wanted to reiterate the personal, because I sat in on a lot of interviews, mostly because we lost team members. So Jake and I were trying to cover stuff as well. But it's absolutely true. I mean, to a T, every single candidate, I didn't hear one oppositional comment. They said that they had gotten service within hours of calling or emailing, and service above and beyond. And Mary, I'm going to tell the story. So one of the candidates said, I got several employment offers after I finished the program, and I was kind of confused. And Mary Dolan got on the phone with them and walked them through some of the advantages and disadvantages of going to work for, just helping them think through where they should land, which is amazing. I just think, but it was to the T. It wasn't just Mary. It was every single team member over there. It was really interesting for such a large number of candidates. So I just wanted to make sure that I said that.
I know we touched on it just a little bit earlier about garnering a unit head. Where are you in that process?
Inquiring minds would like to know. Believe me, lots of people want to know. We did recruit. We just had a situation where the person who was our unit lead for most of the 2 years preparing for the site visit got a great new job and left us. And the person who stepped in immediately got another job and left us. So we just have a little vacuum there at the moment, and the months of December, January don't tend to be the best months for recruitment at that kind of cabinet level. So this system will be in place. There will either be a new solution for who will carry that load of being the unit head, or the recruitment will have occurred and we will have somebody who will take the role of Chief Human Resources Officer, which is the person and role that typically has been the unit head. That will, moving forward with the new academic year, it will be in place. It's not going to be the 6 to 8 months. We're talking about in the near term.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. This is an action item. I'll try again. Do I have a motion? Member Riggs, you move to accept the report as is, seconded by Member Forbes. All those in favor say aye. And opposed? Motion carries, and congratulations. We have one more report. I'm thinking we've been at it for a couple hours. Do we need a 5-minute? Yeah, 5-minute break. Okay. Sure. All right, we are on item 14, which is the report of accreditation team site visit to Mills College. Consultant Sarah Solari Colombini will not be joining us for this meeting. In her stead is Ms. Hickey. At the table is team lead Mark Carey and institutional representative Dr. Diane Cattell, Dean of School of Education for Mills College. Ms. Hickey, will you begin, please?
Certainly. So Sarah was available for a while and then had to go. She's actually technically in Hawaii on vacation. So I'm reading her part of the script. So it was Sarah's pleasure to serve as the consultant for Mills College site visit. We have our team lead, Mark Carey, here, and our institutional representative, Dr. Diane Cattell, all joining us in person. Thank you all for being here and participating in this important part of the accreditation cycle. The Mills College site visit took place in Oakland, California on March 4th through the 7th. Mills College operates 5 approved programs, a multiple single subject program, more commonly known as the Teachers for Tomorrow's Schools program, a preliminary administrative services credential program, and an education specialist early childhood special education program with an added authorization in areas of autism spectrum disorders and emotional disturbance. The team lead, Mark Carey, and his team of 2 BIR members for the common standards and 3 BIR members for the program standards were a great team to work with. And I, Sarah, would like to thank them for their dedication to this work. The team met in advance via video conference and then arrived at the institution on Sunday and conducted interviews through Tuesday afternoon and delivered the report on Wednesday. There were no unusual circumstances with this visit. Mr. Carey, the team lead, will now provide an overview of the visit and provide the team's findings on the common standards, program standards, and the recommendation for the accreditation decision.
Thank you. I always like how those intros work. It's like, okay, and it went like this. Sarah and I began working with the Mills planning team in September prior to the visit. And this was truly a collaborative effort. We had 2 face-to-face meetings with the planning team and leading up to the visit, and several teleconferences along the way. And I think largely as a result of that constant communication, Mills was able to put together a document collection that was really well suited for meeting team member needs. People found it very easy to get through. They were able to get what they needed to get in a way that really helped them prepare for the visit itself. As you read the report, we're hoping that one of the things that comes through is that the programs at Mills are top-notch. This became apparent as we were looking through the documentation. It became tangibly real when we got to the visit itself. One of the things that was difficult to capture in the report was something that each of the team members commented on right from the get-go. And that's that regardless of which constituent groups they were interviewing at the visit, there was a consistent strength of conviction that was tangible. We tried to capture this in writing. We hope we got partway there, but being an institution with deep roots in urban schools, issues of diversity, equity, and community are at the center of Mills' being. And it's not just their operations, it's what they live. And the issues of academic rigor and reflective practice were evident throughout all of the documentation and in every one of the interviews that we had. So if there's a theme to this visit, it's the idea that an institution with a central commitment to diversity of background, experience, and perspective finds strength in working to forge and sustain unity of purpose. And that unity of purpose was not just lip service. It was deeply reflected, deeply felt by team members and reflected by all of the people we worked with. And the more we thought about it and the more we talked about it, it was clear that that's really what enables Mills to be as powerful a force as they are in East Bay schools, because they really live the future they want students to have. So Standard 5, so there's this new piece to Standard 5 on program impact, and this is the first time we're rolling this out, and institutions are saying, okay, so how do we provide evidence that we're having an impact? And that question came up fairly early on in our conversations. And as we went back to the language of the standard and just looked at what it literally said, Dean Kittel said, "Oh, I think we can do this." Yes, they can. Yes, they have. And yes, they currently do. This, what really astounded, and I don't think that's overstating it, but what really astounded team members was for an institution as small as Mills, in terms of numbers, the level of impact that they have through grants, partnerships, programs that engage with and really work to transform schools that they serve was really impressive. So, I mean, that, whether that comes through in the written report or not, I don't know, but I have to tell you that. So in reading the report, you know that all standards at the program and common standards level were met, with two exceptions, and those two exceptions are very narrowly focused, and I want to make sure that we can reiterate that. Before we get to that, a couple of corrections. Cheryl and I were emailing back and forth yesterday because normally we don't do a visit, finish a visit, and turn right around within a week and a half and have the report posted online and available for COA members to read. So there were a few things that we needed to correct. One is the fact that on the cover sheet in the overview, it shows program standard 2 for multiple single subject being met with concerns for both multiple and single subject. That should read single subject only and does read in the corrected report. There's one other one that I came across after I'd gotten through emailing back and forth with Cheryl yesterday afternoon, and that's that in multiple single subject coursework and fieldwork, there's a reference to 10 hours a week of work in student teaching. That should be 20. So it was clear that they meet the 600-hour requirement of the standards. That was a typo. So I wanted to correct those two. So the standard 2 finding for single subject was specific to subject-specific pedagogy support for meeting TPEs in science. And that came to us out of interviews with candidates where the science people said, you know, we're getting basic stuff, but we aren't getting the same level of quality in terms of subject-specific pedagogy support that candidates in other subject areas are. And Mills people talk to each other all the time, and so everyone in the room knew what everyone else was getting. And so the team wasn't able to find any evidence that difference or that inconsistency is likely to prevent candidates from successfully meeting TPEs. But the team felt that we had to note that as a concern. The other concern was with Common Standard 4. And what the team found with Common Standard 4 is that Mills has, and has had for some time, a very robust system of acting on evidence, triangulating it, and implementing improvements based on that evidence. That evidence in the past has been largely informal. That evidence could come from feedback, could come from data collected in TPAs. It could come from feedback from cooperating teachers or schools that the institution is working with, and we saw examples of both of those, and we saw an example of improvements that were based on feedback from one of the large districts that Mills works with. All of that evidence went through a very clear system of determining that the evidence was real, the need for improvement was real, and then engaging stakeholders in the most appropriate ways depending upon what the particular issue was. The thing that was still work in progress, and we talked about this with Dean Kittel right from the get-go, and she acknowledged, and will likely talk about it in a little more detail, was the part of the standard that calls for regular and systematic data collection. So that is work in progress. That's something that that each of the programs recognizes is in their interests. That's something that, having listened to the presentation this morning about completer data, comes at a perfect time for Mills because there is new data that's going to be available for them from CTC. And they can, instead of reinventing those measures, they can really look at how what they do and what they put in place can help triangulate and inform that information that's coming out of the surveys. It's also a perfect time because we're in between biennial reports that had required types of data, and we're not yet into the next set of required types of data. So the team felt that not only did we have to note this, but that noting it comes at a great time. So then, for an accreditation recommendation, under COA guidelines, the team clearly had the authority to recommend accreditation. And we deliberated for some time. in coming up with a recommendation of accreditation with stipulations. And the rationale reflects some of the conversation that you've had earlier today, being that the requirements for regular and systematic data collection have been in existence since 2008. And during the 2009 visit to Mills, it was noted that Mills did not yet have a system for doing that. So at this point, the team said, everything about the institution makes it clear to us that they understand the importance of doing this, and they will continue to do it. At the same time, the team felt an obligation to recommend a stipulation that would provide guidance and direction for them as they bring that aspect of assessment up to the same high level as the rest of their operations. So two very specific concerns that would not normally have resulted in stipulations, but in this particular instance, with the history and the importance of that aspect of assessment, the team felt it was important to recommend that stipulation. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or whatever as you come along, but we move on.
Thank you, Mr. Carey, for your very thorough and detailed report. Much appreciated, including the background of why you made the decisions, you and the team made the decisions you did. It's very informational. At this time, I'd like to invite the Institute to make any comments or provide some more information for us. Again, this is a reminder that this is not the opportunity to debate or the findings of the report.
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to apologize for being late. First of all, I got caught in some traffic, and so I appreciate your flexibility in moving the schedule around. As you realize from reading the report, Mills has small programs. As I was listening to the large program presentation that came before us, I was thinking, if they're Costco, I guess we're like a small boutique. And, they want all of their students to have a wonderful experience, and so do we. But we work in very small numbers at Mills. Some programs enroll about 5 to 7 students. The teacher credential program, which is our largest program, has about 35 students. So we're a very tight-knit faculty, and we're focused on really developing teachers and leaders who will go out and make change in the field and we hope remain in the profession. We really regard teaching as not a hobby, but something we want to introduce to our students as a lifelong endeavor. As Mark outlined, there were 2 key findings, one around the science content, and that finding actually related to a resource issue at the college. A seminar had been pulled away from us that was a science seminar, and we have now been given that science and math seminar back, and so we think next year students will have that concern addressed rather quickly because we will actually be back to having a separate seminar. In terms of the challenges around data collection, I think this can be this can be challenging in small environments, even with very high quality programs. We tend to be, because of our small numbers, very relationship based, and there can be a lot of debate amongst the faculty around what constitutes data. And we tend to be a collection of qualitative researchers, so there's been some amount of growth and interaction going on. I am very confident that we will be able to generate a plan that will complement our existing systematic process for continuous improvement that will more systematically introduce the quantitative data, which really seemed to be the piece that was missing. I think the team validated our collection of qualitative data and was rather impressed by the way we analyze it. They wanted to see us really collecting, even in the small numbers we have, more quantitative data. So we're putting together a plan. We're going to work with knowledgeable consultant, and we're going to really tackle this once and for all. Since the last visit, there's actually been 2 deans that have been in the leadership at Mills. This is my second year as dean. And so we've had some leadership transitions that I think have also impacted, or maybe in some ways interrupted to a degree, some of the progress that could have been made in this area. And so I think now is a moment where we have a faculty who are committed to doing this, and we have this report that I think, although there were a couple of findings, the faculty and the staff experienced as being rather validating of the work that we do, and the interactions we had in the visit were very positive, which actually gives rise to more enthusiasm around pursuing the correction that we've been asked to make. So I think we'll do that fairly seamlessly even in the next months going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to invite the committee members to make any comments or ask any clarifying questions. Yes, Member Alvarado.
So congratulations. But I have a question on Common Standard 4. And thank you for the history in terms of, what took place in 2009. Then it was corrected in at least you got clearance in 2010, and then we're back again now in the same situation. So my question is really about what sorts of processes are you looking to implement so that there's not sort of this reverting back to previous practices?
I appreciate that question. I think in the 2009 visit, the finding was really about the lack of a systematic method for analyzing qualitative or quantitative data in order to implement change for continuous improvement. The finding this time was really focused on the collection of quantitative data, things such as systematic collection of student achievement data that might help faculty ask new questions and bring about changes that we may not be thinking about now. So we're really right now focused on, in particular, student achievement data. We have already begun collecting a whole variety of other data that wasn't collected in the past. Data around admissions, data around adjuncts, data around faculty, data around, I just had a meeting earlier today where they were presenting me with some data there. Really where I think in my interactions with the team, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, I seem to understand that there was a real focus on how the systematic collection of student achievement data introduced into our systematic process for decision making and continuous change and improvement might make an even more powerful impact on the way we try to renew our programs on an ongoing basis. So that's really our focus. And we're going to do that partially. We're beginning at TPA this year, so we're going to have some data coming from that. Next year, there's the APA and the administrative program, and so we'll have some systematic data. But we're asking a lot of other questions around in the faculty about key assignments in programs, and where do faculty want to track and how do they want to track the progress of students through the standards. So we're becoming a bit more sophisticated in our interactions around these matters. And I do think that we do want to bring in a knowledgeable individual, even if it's for a day or a couple of days, who can really introduce some ideas to the faculty. They're always getting it from me. I feel like we need to have maybe the introduction of some of the ideas or things I might have already said, but coming also from another voice and validating some of their thinking as well. So that's the way we're thinking about it. And if there's other, I don't know, you can correct me or comment if I'm off base. But.
No, the team kept coming back to the regular and systematic. It was clear to us, I had read the previous report, the rest of the team hadn't, but I knew we were looking at a distinctly different outcome this time than we had in the 2009 report. But that issue of regular and systematic data about candidate proficiency and program effectiveness. So it's larger than simply achievement data. Are there ways that you can, in a systematic and regular manner, augment the kinds of quantitative measures that you've been using so that you can make the best possible, the best informed possible decisions? The system for, we saw enough examples of how the system itself works. And, you put the input in, and the outcome is virtually guaranteed to be effective because of the way the system includes stakeholders and perspectives and checks and balances. But the regular and systematic part is the part that is still elusive.
Okay, Member Pensaval.
So I would like to congratulate you too. I thought your document was very interesting. Even in the first read, it struck me how diverse your student population is. And I would like to suggest that you are having an impact by having such a diverse student population that classroom students get to see teachers that look like them. So I think that's very important. Are there any strategies you use to, diversify your student population?
It's a lot of hard work. Partially, it's done through collaboration with the institution around how financial aid is awarded. So one aspect is making mills affordable. Another aspect is really being able to get out in the community, particularly in our surrounding area. We have a very strong reputation, and we often do recruitment out in the community. Our faculty will go out, we'll have meetings, we'll talk to teachers, or we'll talk to undergraduate students who are thinking about being teachers. This past year, we ran an undergraduate seminar on campus that introduced the profession of teaching to undergraduates. So we use a lot of different strategies to try to think. We kind of come together and we try to brainstorm how we can, we see the diversity of our programs as part of the dynamism of it. So it isn't just, diversity for us isn't a class you take or something on a card you check off. It's really a value we're trying to live, and we want to see that in our student population. We see it in our faculty. We have a very diverse, both ranked faculty and adjunct faculty. So it's kind of a collection of strategies. Fortunately, we're on a campus where when leadership is really trying to not only envision these values in action, but also bring it very practically into programs, there's campus support for it. And so I guess I would say that one of the key factors is the financial aid, but it's coupled with a curriculum that the students who end up coming to Mills find compelling and relevant.
Okay, that takes us to item 19, I believe, which is public comment. No public comment? Does any member of the public have anything it wishes to say? All right, having no further business, I adjourn the March 2018 meeting of the Committee on Accreditation. The next meeting of the committee will be on May 10th and 11th, 2018. Both days, Cheryl? Both days. All right. And thank you for joining us.